Yeah. Okay, the Jentry podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry podcast. The Jentry podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello, and welcome to the Jentry podcast. Today we have an incredible guest, Jon Hartman-Brown, the Economic Development Director of Carrboro, North Carolina. But he's more than that. He's a devoted partner, a traveler, a concert goer, a Christmas dinner saver with his culinary skills. And I actually met Jon before the podcast. So I met him through amazing UNC professor, Tim Flood. I was doing a program at the Fidelity Center of Advanced Technology. And I met him there and I let him know what I was interested in the work I had done. And he said, I know somebody that is innovative, working in an innovative place, and they're really making some change. And speaking to Jon, I learned so much about what they're doing and what he's been able to do over his long career, which has spanned everything from planning. He was an interim city manager and now an economic developer. So without further ado, I'm going to shut up because I want you guys to meet Jon. Jon, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So I alluded to it a little bit, but you had a pretty illustrious career so far. Can you kind of talk through, even from the beginning, how you got into wanting to be a leader in local government and then your trajectory through that?
Yeah, sure. So my undergrad is actually in business. And so I was business and pre-law at the time, planning on going to law school. And at the time when I was going through my program, I had a professor, my pre-law professor said, have you ever thought about anything other than law? Because right now, everybody and their brother is going to law school. And don't go to law school, but if that's something, it's going to be a while and you're probably not going to make, as much money as traditionally you would think that attorneys would make. So I said, I've always, I grew up in a small town and my family had a small business there. And so I'd always been interested in kind of the impact of local government on that business and the community and how it shaped the community. And so I said, well, I kind of have an interest in local government. So I got an internship there with the town next door. That summer internship turned into a 2-year-long internship with the town. They asked me to come back the next semester and stay on board. And so I worked in the city manager's office there for 2 years as an intern, and then they were hiring a planner. And so about the time I graduated, and so I applied for the job, got that position, and then started my master's program as well in public administration. And from there, a couple of years later, I was actually promoted to the planning director. So I was the youngest planning director in the state of Tennessee for a few years there at least, and held that position. We restructured it when there were some economic development issues, and so with our county economic development agency, and so then we shifted all that to my department as well. So I did economic development as well as planning there, and then had an opportunity to move to the Triangle. My partner and I did, so we took it and got the position here in Carrboro as the economic development director. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind career, but during my time in Tennessee, I also served as interim city manager as well. That was an interesting career because I come back in Tennessee. It was very much very red, very rural, pretty rural. And here it's very blue and very urban. I'm shifting from one end of the spectrum to the other in my career. So it's been a good learning experience to kind of work in both types of communities, both types of environments. And it's been a great learning.
That's an incredible career journey. Like, you have been consistent in your ability to serve the community. And it's funny, I have a similar route of how I got to where I am. I'm the son of two parents that went to law school, which is hilarious. But my father was a small business owner and was a government contractor. And I got to see how that affected not just my family, but the people he employed and also the people he was able to effectuate a change for, and how important the local government was. I ended up going to Wall Street, so I went a different way, but I got back. So I'm back now. But that's incredible. You've been able to see just different sides of local government from your career path and the different roles, but also in the different demographics and the leanings of the places that you worked in. Could you give me more about Carrboro and just how it's been, what its kind of makeup, and you guys are known for a lot. Can you just give me a little more about the town?
Yeah, sure. So Carrboro kind of has a reputation as being kind of a funky, smaller community. We're a mile from UNC Chapel Hill, so we are our boundary borders Chapel Hill. So if you're going from downtown Carrboro into Chapel Hill, you probably don't even know where you started and where Carrboro ended, where Chapel Hill began. So for those that aren't familiar with the area, but yeah, it's a very activist community. Very strong in our values here in our community, and really take a strong role in living out those values. So we have a very strong social program here on the local government side, which was very different, of course, from where I was in Tennessee. And so that's a positive thing that I think really benefits our community. And the thing that I really enjoy here is that we've got a strong set of values and that we really try to live them out, I think, from a council perspective, and a staff perspective, but really trying to weave in a lot of things. Our two main pillars that we talk about constantly here that drive a lot of the work we do is really focused on racial equity and on climate action and sustainability. So every budget cycle, every council item that you're bringing before council, every policy that we want to adopt or look to adopt is really kind of focused on these two pillars. What this action doing relating back to healing racial equity, providing racial equity and healing racial ties, as well as increasing or positively impacting our carbon emissions or climate action, creating more sustainable programs. And so that's really a lot of what I focus on here is both of those components, but primarily racial equity, since that's a big component for economic development.
Wow. Since I last spoke to you, a lot has changed at the federal level, more specifically. How, if any, has that had any effect on some of the strategic priorities that you guys hold near and dear?
Yeah, so it hasn't. We're just trying to figure out how to work within this new administration and within this new context. So I will give props to our council and to our administration. They have really stood by and said, these are our values and we're going to live them out. We don't care what the White House says. We don't care what Congress says right now. We're going to continue to push forward and find ways to live out these values. There's been some legislation that's been introduced in the North Carolina legislature that would require that anybody receiving state funding would eliminate DEI programs or anything like that, racial equity-based programs. And so that's another challenge we're working through right now is what are the implications on the state level if that bill passes, and how are we going to continue to fund our existing programs to support this? So there's some challenges for sure, but I feel confident in the programming that I put on and the work I do that our council and our administration will have my back.
One question, and this is purely coming from a place of just intrigue and interest. I speak to a lot of people, and throughout the nation, there's a lot of push for local businesses getting contracts and local talent getting contracts, especially around like subsidies when you're like using, city or county money for a project. Does that fall under DEI, or based on the legislation that you guys have kind of been looking at? Does that fall within, or is it typically around other factors? Because I know there's a lot of programs across the nation like that.
So we do have kind of our council does, whenever we do any kind of projects, we just got done building a new municipal building library complex here in town. And just as an example, part of that contract was we require that the general contractor hire a certain percentage of those dollars go to BIPOC businesses of some kind. So they need, whether it's your plumber, whether it's your electrician, whether it's the people who are putting the windows on the building, whatever the case may be, certain set aside needs to go to BIPOC businesses. So that's kind of something that we implement now as a part of our contracting. The town has just finished, council just received last month actually an update or the final report for our disparity study on the town procurement procedures and processes. And so we're going to continue to lift that up as a major component for the town and ensuring that we're doing a better job of finding areas where there was areas of disparate impacts. There clearly wasn't intention here, but there is a disparity in how we do our procurement. And so in certain areas. And so we're working to try to shift our policies to help do a better job of holding us accountable from a staff perspective, as well as a town-wide perspective when we do projects or make purchases, to ensure that we are giving a fair opportunity both to local businesses and to women-owned and BIPOC businesses.
Totally understand that. It sounds like you all are really championing your strategic principles and what you believe. And it sounds like it's coming from the council and then obviously your office as well. So I definitely applaud you guys for living what you believe, because I know at certain times it can be difficult to do that. Now, shifting gears to any initiative that you may have, I'd love to just kind of just see if there's any initiative that you have that you're excited about that's coming. And obviously I don't want you to break any NDAs, but just anything that you could share with us that you guys kind of have coming down the pike.
Yeah, I would say probably the one thing that I'm kind of excited about is we are working right now with a Centro Hispano here in Carrboro to do a Spanish-only accelerator program. So that's something that we have kind of talked about, but we worked with them on opportunities before. We ran into some issues previously just with finding Spanish-speaking qualified facilitators that speak Spanish. So El Centro has recently gotten back to us about some opportunities that we'll probably be looking at doing this calendar year for sure, and implementing an accelerator that will be Spanish only. So we recognize and want to encourage opportunities for business in our Spanish-speaking community as well. And so I think that that's a really good opportunity for us to really showcase our values. A lot of times we focus on, we focus on minority businesses, but I think a lot of times we forget about immigrant populations or people who are new to the community, new to our country. And there's no better way to build intergenerational wealth than to start a business. And so that's really kind of a driving focus for my department, is building intergenerational wealth. And so that's something that we're looking at. And I'm really excited about this program coming up. So it'll be a great opportunity for our Spanish-speaking citizens to really take advantage and start and grow their businesses.
I love that. And you hit the nail on the head that starting a business is that key, or one of the keys, I'll say, to that intergenerational wealth. And here at Jentry, we believe that everyone has the right to work, invest, and retire in their community. And that brings up for me, how are you guys creating a space where your residents can go through the entire facet of life? So for example, when you're fresh out of college, well, first and foremost, having colleges around, which I know you guys do, but then also you're fresh out of college, you maybe want a small apartment and you need a good job that you can find that you're qualified for through that, a little bit older, starting a family, maybe want a small house, through that maturing and getting the picket fence, the 2.5 kids, and everything, through retirement to when you want to downsize, and you want the amenities that you've earned over time. So how is Carrboro kind of setting your community up for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think something that our community really struggles with. And it's in a community like ours is very hard to kind of accomplish that, because we have, especially from a housing perspective, because we have such competing interests in housing. So for example, we have a lot of rental properties in Carrboro. And while you would say, well, that's great, that can really help drive housing costs, especially as new apartment buildings are built. Those older apartment buildings lower the rates comparatively to the new apartment buildings to be competitive. The problem is that we have an artificial audience, I must say citizens, because they really are citizens, but we have artificial pressures that many communities don't have. And that is, we have one of the most renowned and well-respected universities in the nation and even the world in our backyard. And so that puts a lot of pressure from the university for students, both primarily graduate here in Carrboro, but we also have many of our complexes that cater to undergrads as well. And so we have this pressure that kind of comes every fall and puts a lot of pressure on our housing market. And so that makes it very difficult when you have that much housing that's taken up by undergrad and graduate students. to make sure that our community is a fully kind of cradle-to-grave livable community. Our economy is also very unique in that we don't feel the typical pressures, I would say, that many communities feel because primarily of the university and UNC hospital. So when it comes to job creation, we don't have the typical bust and boom cycles that many communities have because the university and hospital kind of stabilizes. Kind of imagine a ship, they're like the big rock that sits at the bottom of our ship and stabilizes. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a calm day or a stormy day, our economy still stays fairly stable because of that. There's such a huge employer, both the hospital and the university, that it really drives a lot of our economy. So when we're talking about kind of entry-level jobs, or even kind of more elite executive jobs as you age through a system, it's a very difficult thing to try to balance in our community. We try to really in Carrboro, focus on building more housing to try to deal with that. I think that's a good strategy. We have a high emphasis on affordable housing that we play into in our community. Also, any new developments, the council has a high expectation that there's going to be some level of affordable housing incorporated into that development. And that's one way that we can address it. But from a jobs perspective, really, the university is kind of our big driver here in the hospital. So whatever entry-level jobs are available there, we help promote. We partner with Chapel Hill to do job fairs and things like that. And we also do, in Carrboro specifically, we focus on the small business opportunities. So we try to run an business accelerator every year to give opportunity for folks. We partnered with Launch in the past to do some programming as well to help encourage, for those who aren't familiar, Launch is a accelerator program as well. To try to get, that are younger, maybe fresh out of school, have great ideas. That's the great time to say, hey, you got an idea, you got the energy, let's get in here, start a business, and how can we help make you successful? So I think those are a few of the things that we do, but I think there's a lot more we can do. It's just trying to balance out the reality of our economy and how do we do a better job of kind of trying to be a cradle-to-grave kind of community. So lots of work to do there on that question.
No, and that's something that most communities are trying to perfect. It's very difficult, and in a sense, I think you hit it right on the head there. There are benefits that come from having a huge university, big job creator. Obviously, just you said that's just so renowned, and it brings a level of almost cachet to the community. But then it does, unnaturally inflate real estate at certain times, create pressures in certain areas. So it's that give and take that you have. And I'm sure so many different communities have just, I think that bedrock and foundation of having the jobs is so important. And I know even just speaking to people casually, there's a lot of communities that wish they just had the jobs and could figure out the real estate later. You spoke about small business. I mean, that's something that we kind of touched on. It is near and dear to my heart, and I've seen while researching you that you've worked with businesses in the community, and they support and believe in you. What are some of the ways that you're supporting the local businesses? I know you spoke about the business accelerator, but even to like how you help them get space in Carrboro, because rents for business can be a killer. So I'd love to kind of hear more about other things you're doing for the local small businesses.
Yeah, so we do an accelerator. We do some other small business programming. Of course, we partnered with the SBTDC, the Black Business Alliance at the Chamber of Commerce to try to do some additional programming. And most of our programming is really, because Carrboro has such a smaller population base, all of our programming primarily has an emphasis for BIPOC entrepreneurs. So we really try to find programming that really kind of helps and speaks to the challenges that BIPOC entrepreneurs face. But we do run those programs, a few times a year. I think the other thing that we really struggle with, and you mentioned this, is space. We are really in high need for retail space right now. Our retail commercial space right now is mostly office availability. We have very few. I probably have 4 spaces in the entire town that are retail oriented. So the rest are all offices. So if that gives you any idea, we're about 4% vacancy rate, and that needs to be closer to 6 in a commercial market, just to kind of give us enough fluidity so that there's enough availability for people to find what they need and meet the demands that they have for their business. So that's really a challenge, and kind of going forward, something we're working very closely on. We're really pushed in my department, pushed and spearheaded we're not the lead agency, but we really pushed the emphasis on creating a downtown master plan for the community. And so that's actually being done as we speak. So that's underway right now, because we really need to have a better understanding of where does the community want to see development in downtown particularly, and what do we want that to look like? The community here in Carrboro, we have a very strong sense of place, and we have a very strong preservation. A lot of people moved into this town in the 70s and 80s, and Chapel Hill goes to this to some extent as well. You know, you go to college and you go to university, and then that great restaurant we used to go to with my buddies, and all this, walk up and down Franklin Street and walk up and down Main Street, Carrboro and Weaver Street and all that. And then it's like, well, we're going to tear this building down, these 3 buildings down, so we can build a bigger, 5-6-story building. And, everybody just, oh my gosh, like, my buddies and I used to go there. You can't tear this building down, kind of thing. So there's great nostalgia tied to a lot of this, but that's kind of the challenge that we face. And so we needed a better master plan. We needed the community to have this discussion to say, this is where we feel like it's appropriate to build new development, and this is where we don't feel like it is. So, and what that development should look like. So we try to have the argument up front so that we can build more retail space and mixed-use development. So real estate is also, coming back to kind of the housing thing. It's the same thing with commercial real estate as well. It's a challenge. Right now for us.
I have some more questions on business, but I love what you said. Let's have the argument up front when planning what downtown and how you should develop downtown. I've seen so many from economic developers to city managers to mayors sometimes say communicating with residents and the community can be tough, in the sense that it feels like there's that one population of people, like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. They have something that, they're really upset about, or they need to change, and they get a lot of attention. And then the other population are the people that, something's really good and they need, and they're getting something, so they get it. But it's the general community that is the majority, and they may not have the time to go to a town meeting, or they may not be on the Facebook group angry stating things, but that's the majority. So you can speak to, within this downtown plan, master plan, or just generally, like, how are you guys communicating to your community members?
Yeah, so we have a great communications and engagement department. They put out, I think we have a weekly newsletter that goes out. There are multiple news flashes that go out every week. There's at least, 2 or 3 posts on our social media pages. So our communications and engagement team do a really great job of communicating with the public, or at least, how do I say this? Because it's not always clear, but attempting to communicate with the public. It's kind of a two-way street to some extent. We're putting everything out there, but you still have to kind of do a little bit of due diligence on your part as a community member and a citizen to absorb and, subscribe to these kinds of things. So they do a really great job with that. We also have, of course, a lot of engagement. Carrboro is known for public engagement. In my personal opinion, a little too much public engagement sometimes. There's a statistically significant number, and then we try to double or triple that. It's like, okay, maybe we need to just calm down. We're not likely going to get substantially different information beyond that number, substantially beyond that number. So we really do a good job, and this downtown plan has had a substantial engagement process as a part of it. So we've had in-person events, we've had online opportunity, we've had survey, we've had open forums, we've had educational components. It's really been a high level engagement that we've been really trying to do to get exactly at what you said. A lot of times there is a niche group, and typically it's the opposition. The opposition, people who are opposed to something, are always more likely to coalesce and find each other and form a pact, as opposed to the people who are for something. You always hear from the people who are against it rather than for it. So I think that was a really good, on our part, the push to get the downtown plan was really this basis based on that. We're constantly hearing from people in the community that are within maybe a mile of downtown. They want it more walkable. They want it more bikeable. They want They wanted to keep it the same. And all these things are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with those things. But I'm also hearing kind of in the other ear, a group of people saying, if I'm going to drive downtown, where do I park? Um, we need to have more businesses downtown. I'm hearing from the business community, I got to have more customers, and you're trying to take away parking. Making sure we're hearing from all members of the community and that we are appropriately responding to all members of the community. So the downtown plan, I think, has really done a good job with that and really kind of give better voice to those who may not have typically been in that position group.
That makes so much sense. When you're angry about something, it is so easy to see who else is fuming, and then you guys can bounce ideas and go forward. Where it's, when it feels positive, it's a little bit harder to kind of seek that out. How have you guys used like any advisors or kind of leaders within the community to kind of help with that messaging of sometimes things that do make people a little bit angry, or maybe they need a little more education? Have you guys done anything around that?
Not particularly. We do involve, the town has a series of, I think, 9 advisory boards. And so they're picked by council. So there is a little bit of a process there, but they have been involved in this process also. And they have been given multiple opportunities to provide input. And this includes everybody from, our climate action advisory boards to planning commissions to transportation advisory boards to the economic sustainability advisory board. So lots of different perspectives here that have been brought into the fold to provide input. And typically that's fairly standard for us here in Carrboro. We run a lot of big decisions by these boards and get a variety of input on projects or ideas. So we also work closely with the Carrboro Business Alliance, which is it's folded under the chamber, but it's kind of a separate local business association. And so we will frequently keep them in the loop. Here's opportunities for you to provide input, provide buy-in. And so they do provide comments many times on policies, or especially with the downtown plan, their thoughts on where they feel like we need to.
It seems to me you guys are doing it very effectively, utilizing those boards, because they kind of become your champions to the community in a sense, and provide great feedback from the community. So I think that's a clever way to, again, tie what you need from the community and your ability to message to the community. So I think you guys are doing it in a very clever way. Shifting back to business a little bit, one of the things you brought up was just not having space. And, as I've been a small business owner myself, sometimes when you don't have those options, you may just go for a space that's a little too big coming straight out of the gates. And that can be a death sentence of sorts. Have you guys done anything around kind of helping people maybe get into spaces, or even, I guess, yeah, like, we have affordable housing, anything like a affordable like retail space or anything that you guys have done in the past?
Yeah, so affordable retail space is something that's on our radar in my department. We're kind of looking at, there's some things that we're really starting to work on that once the downtown master plan is finished, we'll really start executing on. And some of that is going to be things like, we're really looking at opportunities for land banking parcels, and then using that leverage to developers and say, hey, we'll put our equity, if you will, is the land. And as a result of this, we want 20% affordable housing, and we want at least 2 retail spaces that are affordable. Using that leverage to get the things that we feel like we need as a community. So that's something I think that we're working towards, but we don't really have currently don't have any kind of affordable retail space that we set up specifically. I do work with, or have worked with, businesses that are starting up, and sometimes we'll work with other businesses. So, for example, I had a business that was starting. It was a cheesemonger. That's a very niche type of field to start a business in. And he said, I really don't think there's a good cheesemonger in the Triangle yet, and I would like to start it. I want to start it here in Carrboro. And I said, all right, let's walk through your business plan. Let's kind of do some preliminary work here, and let's do some market discovery. And he did talk to some customers, and there seemed to be an interest. But again, it being such a niche market, I said, I don't have any space available, and I would strongly discourage you from taking any of the spaces that I do. We just don't know. There's so much unknown about your business yet that I would not advise that you you have your own space. So we worked with a local restaurant, actually. I got a hold of the restaurant owner and the cheesemonger, and the cheesemonger actually started in the restaurant. So as you walked in, you were kind of in the waiting area. They also had the restaurant had a wine shop. And so it paired well with the cheese shop being right there. And actually, this is the name of the business, cheese shop. And so they were able to locate inside the restaurant. They paid the restaurant some rent. So that provided a revenue stream for that restaurant. And it allowed them, they had a cheese case, and it allowed them to operate their business and really get started and build a customer base. And they just announced about 6 months ago that they're expanding into a new space down the road. So they'll still be here in Carrboro, but they're moving out and moving into their own space now. They've created a great customer base, people coming from all over the triangle to visit their cheese shop. And they've done a lot of pairings with local businesses. So, the wine shop, they've done some stuff with the wine component at the restaurant. They've done some stuff with a bar down the road where they do pairings and other events like that. So they've really found their niche, found their customer base, and were successful and came and have hit it off since. So, those are opportunities that I look for to kind of get without having the tools, having the town-owned affordable space, but just looking at who is willing to be a partner here.
You just said the word that was going through my head while you were speaking, partnership. That's what you want to see as a business owner, literally. First and foremost, you got in the weeds with them and say, hey, let's do some customer discovery. Let's look through your business plan. Let's figure this out, had the conversations. And then you were able to utilize your network to reach out to somebody that was totally a compliment. And then they were able to grow organically, get their name out, support another business, and now they're moving down the road. And I think you breed a sense of loyalty to Carrboro in the sense like this business could be huge, but they're going to know when they were just getting started and could have made a huge mistake, the community supported them. So I think that is incredible and exactly what I'll say as a business owner myself, but I'm always looking for from a community. How are you taking that to attract outside businesses? What do you guys kind of use there? Be it, I've heard everything from utilizing the quickness of certification to making sure the land is ready, to utilizing incentives. Like what are some things that you guys kind of utilize to successfully attract businesses from outside?
Yeah, so believe it or not, that's not something that we're placing a large emphasis on right now. So we do have some recruiting going on for a few office buildings that we have, but that's, as we all know, that market is very unstable right now. So as things begin to stabilize and, more businesses are looking for office space, we'll be looking to kind of recruit them for that. But as far as retail spaces or retail businesses, I just don't have the space. When we working on right now a potential recruitment for co-working facility, and they're very interested in Carrboro. They like the vibe, and that's kind of how we sell Carrboro is, hey, we're a funky town, we're really looking for a funky business, and so we're looking for something that's going to match our vibe. And the business is great, but they're looking at Chapel Hill now. I have my colleague from Chapel Hill and I are working together, and so they're looking at Chapel Hill because we just don't have the space that they're looking for. And so that's just an example of, the challenge we have in Carrboro with the need for more development and the need to create more space. I've got my council members, applying pressure. We need more businesses. And it's just like, I would love to bring businesses in, but y'all got to help me out here I got to have more space. I can't bring new businesses in if I don't have a space to put them. So yeah, unfortunately, that's not a big emphasis that we're placing right now. Prospect comes knocking, I'll be happy to show property. Like I said, we are doing a little bit on the office side, but it's not robust. And as far as retail side, we're really just kind of lying low, and if there's interest, we'll go after it. Yeah, after the master plan is finished up, that's going to be a really big component then for me to really start identifying properties, getting them under control, and then really taking that and selling Carrboro. And I think the real big thing that we're going to be focusing on is the funkiness, which is our music scene, the our vibe, in Carrboro, our emphasis on local and the loyalty that our community has to our local businesses. So those are really, I think, major selling points for us. We don't really use incentives, believe it or not, in Carrboro. That's something that our council has not, at least in the past, not really taken kindly to. So I know there's many communities, the last community I worked in, I know would be like, are you kidding me? So, but I mean, unfortunately, we're fortunate enough that there's a high demand for a development in Carrboro, and so the need for incentives is minimal in many cases. But that may change as we look to finishing up the downtown master plan and we start to look at redevelopment opportunities.
You identified some challenges, and I appreciate your candor there. If you could choose just one to maybe, and it doesn't have to be anything you said, maybe even something small, but just one thing that if you could just snap your fingers and change today, you would do that. What challenge or even a barrier would that be?
I would say both of these we're working on. So we got the downtown master plan, which we're working on, and we're in the process right now, beginning stages of rewriting our unified development ordinance. I would say if I could snap my fingers, I would just fast forward 2 years and have both of those things done. So, because I think once we get both of those done, those seem to be the biggest barriers is when we're looking at developing in downtown or anywhere really in the community. The intent of our ordinance, our land use ordinance currently, is to provide flexibility. And so as a result of providing the flexibility, we allow lots of special use permits to be issued, which means that every development is almost a negotiation. And that puts a extremely long timeline on projects. So every project now is going through, and it's going through every advisory board, probably twice. And then it's got to go through a political process. It has to go to council for final approval. And so that whole process just makes everything a barrier to development. Maybe we saw development was doing great in Durham and Raleigh and even Chapel Hill, booming. And then what happened a year later, COVID hit and interest rates started driving up, and now all of a sudden, inflation and then interest rates, and now all of a sudden it's like, if it wasn't coming out of the ground by 2021, it's not coming out. There's no we might start to see stuff loosen up a little here. But now I just was reading this morning, we've got the tariffs in place. So I don't know what that's going to do either. So we're kind of just waiting on a lot of these things. But I think that's, time is money in many cases for these developers. And so going through a 2-year, 3-year long process just to get a project approved is not really an acceptable space, especially in today's economic environment. So my wish would be we snap our fingers. We have we've got the arguments already taken care of. We've argued up front. So that way, when a development comes, we're not arguing about the development and what it should and shouldn't be and should and shouldn't look like. Then it's already done. We've already had the argument. We've said that this property was going to be redeveloped. We're going to develop it, and here's what it's going to look like, and we're moving on.
Love that. But the challenges are things that you're already addressing. There are things that you guys are working hard on. You want time to move forward. That's a great place to be because, when the dust all settles, you'll be in that next step. And my final question is, fast forwarding past the 2 years, what's kind of your vision for maybe 5, 10, and you can go even further out for Carrboro in the future generally?
Yeah, I think my vision is, it's based off of high need for looking at the financial aspect of the town and how we create revenue. The economic department in many ways is kind of the salesman, if you will, of the town. Our job is to go out and bring in business. And we do that by, our job is really missioned in providing jobs so that people can buy homes and have nice things, which results in retail sales and in property taxes, as well as bringing companies, because that investment feeds our property taxes, which is in most cities, it makes up probably, 2/3 to 3/4 of their sale, of their total revenue. So kind of looking forward down the road, I really see Carrboro is being more dense. We're going to have to, from that financial aspect, we're going to have to be more dense. And so my vision is really focused on how do we create that density in a context-sensitive way, that we're not displacing people, that we're not driving up costs on other people in our community. So yeah, I think that's kind of the vision that I would have is I would walk through Carrboro in 20 years from now and see, maybe a lot more 5-story and possibly even some 6 or 7 story buildings in downtown and in the immediate area around downtown. Even our shopping centers, we're in some discussions with having some early conversations, I guess, with some shopping center owners about redeveloping those and taking those parking lots, and how do we better utilize this space as opposed to just having a big parking lot and a 1-story L-shaped shopping center. So yeah, more density. I think when I come back to Carrboro in 10 years or 20 years, if I'm still here, then that's what I'd like to see.
John, I think you hit the nail on the head of that delicate balance. You want to become more dense, you want to bring in more business, you want to grow businesses, but then you don't want to displace the community and the residents that make Carrboro what it is, and then still have that vibe you spoke of. I think you said like almost like a funky town, like different viewpoints, and you don't want to lose that. So I think that is a tall task, but I think the fact that funny enough, you're arguing up front. You're already thinking about it now before it's kind of played out. I think that's incredible, and I appreciate that as a neighbor to Carrboro. But John, is there anything that you want to say? You felt like we missed? I definitely want to pause here for that.
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered kind of the essence and the positives and negatives of Carrboro and economic development here. So I thank you, Jonathan, for having me on. And I always enjoy talking about this kind of stuff with people. So thanks for indulging me in the conversation.
The pleasure was all mine, John. Every time I speak to you, are just so candid, so thoughtful, and clearly passionate about what you're doing, and you speak very eloquently and intelligently on future issues and things coming down, so to say. So I'm very much appreciative of you coming on and taking your time. For our viewers and listeners that would like to connect, what's the best way for them to learn more about Carrboro?
Sure. So they can visit our website, www.carboro.nc.gov, and you can go to the Economic Development Department there and check out everything that we're doing and what we've got going on. But just peruse around the site. You can find ways to, if there's anybody local or would like to learn more information about some of our engagement processes, you can go to, there's an engagement page on there as well that you can check out and learn about different projects, including our downtown plan there. And if you're interested, subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Our communication and engagement team would love to have your information on there.
Well, that is it for the Jentry podcast. Thank you, John. This has been an incredible episode. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for being here. Have a good one, everyone.
You're welcome.